Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome. So happy to have everybody here today. We are, inshallah, starting a very new class today about Hadith sciences. So, inshallah, we are going to be learning a totally new topic. We finished class, and so really excited for this new class, inshallah. So let me mute everybody, and let's get beginning, inshallah. So if we remember, those of you that have been with us, in the past few weeks, you know that we talked about how we have two sources of knowledge, right? Authentic sources of knowledge. Can anybody remember what those two sources of knowledge are? Let me unmute you. So what is one source of knowledge for a Muslim? When a Muslim says La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, what is our very first source of knowledge? Our Quran? Yes, exactly. Very good. So our very first source of knowledge is the Quran. Okay, and we have a secondary source of knowledge that we consider authentic knowledge. Who can tell me who that is, what that is? Hadith. Asma says Hadith, and she's absolutely right. So the Quran is revelation from Allah, and the Hadith, as we know, yes, exactly, Asma. So Asma said Hadith and she said Sunnah, and that's totally true, because as we know that as Muslims, we have to, number one, believe that the Quran is revealed by Allah, and the other part of our aqidah is that the Prophet Muhammad is our example and model. He's the messenger of Allah, and he was guided by Allah. So everything that he did in his life,
hurry up! It's
revelation. Everything that he did is considered sunnah. Okay, it's considered sunnah. Now, how do we know what the sunnah is? How do we know what the sunnah is? That is through our hadith, right? So we just finished a class. We just finished a class where we talked about just the Prophet Muhammad's life in general. And this is more of a historical class in which we learned about, the occurrences in his life. But this is not what hadith is. This is just the seerah. And there's definitely a lot more to the seerah, but this was one version of the seerah that gave us some information. The difference is that hadith is the actual account of what happened. Okay, it's the actual account of what happened. And so with the Quran, we know that it was revealed from Allah to human beings, right? So the chain of narrators would be, from Allah to the Prophet, and then it came to the human beings. With the hadith, on the other hand, with the hadith, these are transmitted from individual human beings to other human beings, okay? Individual human beings to other human beings. So a hadith book would look like this. My camera, it's a document camera. So I just want to show you that this, for example, is a hadith book. And in this class, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through, we picked, for example, Riyadh al-Salihin as an authentic source, as an authentic collection of hadith that we're going to be going through. So you can see what the hadith look like here. You can see that here we have the Arabic, the original Arabic, and we also have a translation of the hadith. And so inshallah, we're going to be going through these books a little bit so we can see the contents of what really the hadith look like, what the books look like. I want everyone here to have that confidence when they're going in, when they're approaching the hadith, okay? So, yes. So, that being said, what we're going to be doing in these few classes, let me stop sharing for a second. What we will do in approximately 10 sessions of the class is we're going to learn a little bit about the sciences of the hadith and a little bit about the actual narrators of the hadith, like the collections that the authentic collections. And we're going to take a good look at that Riyadh al-Salihin as an example text so that all of you feel that confidence, when you're going in to the hadith. So let me start off. We have valuable time that's passing. So let me start off here giving some basic information. So when you have a hadith, we said that it goes from individual to individual, right? So let's say the Prophet ﷺ was doing something. The Prophet was doing something and somebody saw him doing that, right? Somebody witnessed him, somebody watched him, somebody heard him. So that first person that saw him noticed that he was doing something, right? And then that person, or maybe multiple people, put that into transmission and into a recorded form. So it might have been his wife or his best friend saw him doing something, and then you have the hadith scholars and the chain of transmitters who recorded that and put that into a collection, right? That's how we know what the Prophet did when he was at home, when he was at the masjid. That's how we know how he ate, how he slept, how he prayed, because who would have known these things? It's the people right around him, right? Like his children, his wives, his companions. Those are the people that knew that stuff. So one word that I want you to know for the Kahoot today is isnad. Isnad, okay? So isnad is the chain of transmitters. So it's the people who transmitted that hadith. So you need to know that word isnad, and that those are the individuals who transmitted the hadith. And when the scholars look at the isnad of a hadith, they do not ever accept a hadith that goes against the Quran. Okay, that's a good question as well. So the isnad has to be a reliable chain of narrators. Okay, I also text. So the text of the hadith is the matan. Okay, the text of the hadith is the matan of the hadith. So if I can show you an example from my pictures here. See my screen?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I apologize about that. I have to get used to this document camera. I just installed it like an hour ago, so I'm just, I have to remember to switch back and forth. Okay, so let me show you this one again. So right here, I'm showing you what a hadith looks like, the parts of the hadith, okay? So the parts, you have the, right here where it says Abu Sa'ad al-Khudri radiallahu anhu reported. So now we know that this is the person who reported, okay? So you have the isnad there. The isnad is right here. Abu Sa'ad al-Khudri, radiallahu anhu, reported. Then on every hadith, you're going to have this colon right here. So after that colon is the matan of the hadith, okay? So you have the actual text of the hadith. And every time you have a hadith, it's going to say, the messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said something or he did something. So because all of the hadith are about the Prophet, right? So what you're going to have in common with every hadith is the chain of narrators. Then you're going to have a colon. If it's English, it's a colon. Also in Arabic, it's a colon, you can see. And you're going to say the messenger of Allah said something or did something. And then you see, what did he do? So in this case, when one yawns, he should put his hand over his mouth. Otherwise, the devil will enter. That in itself is the text of the hadith. And at the very end, you're going to have some kind of a collection. Like in this case, it is Muslim. That tells you which book collection that's from, okay? So this is an example of what the matan and the isnad are of the hadiths. Let me admit everybody here. Okay, so very good. So I also want you to know another key word, which is the classification of hadith. The classification of hadith. So that term is musta'ala al-hadith. Musta'ala al-hadith. That means the classification of hadith. Now, if you look on the website really quick, you can see that I've actually provided you with the keywords. If you go to the website, I have some documents here for you. So one of the documents right here is the Key Vocabulary Study Guide. I hope you can see that. So if you open the Key Vocabulary Study Guide, you're going to have all these words that are the key vocabulary. Well, there we go. There. Okay, there we go. So you can see this. If you want to print it, you can download it, but it's going to have all the words that we're going to be talking about. Here you have the word matan, the word isnad. There's some keywords here. They are not all defined for you yet. I just wanted you to have the words, and over time you can fill in notes, definitions, whatever you want to do. So far we talked about matan and isnad. I also want you to know a few more words here. So musta'ala al-hadith, which is here, classification of hadith. That is a key word which we're going to learn more about as we go along. Another thing I want to show you on the website as well. And every time I have to reshare the screen. There's another document we'll go over today, which is HadithScience book contents. So if you click on that second document, this gives you like an entire survey of what's inside HadithScience. Okay, so it tells you the book name and it tells you the chapter number. Oh, I hope you can see my screen where it says HadithScience. And here are, I just went through the entire HadithScience and I wrote down here the book names, And then each of those has many chapters in it. And we're just going to get familiar with that today as well. So these documents are there for you on the website for you to look at and learn from. Let me stop the share. So yes, so a brief history of the classification of hadith is the mustala al-hadith. And another word I want you to know about that we're going to refer to is the rijal al-hadith, which is the study of the reporters of the hadith, rijal al-hadith, okay? I also want you to know that the Sahaba were the companions of the Prophet. Okay, the Sahaba, that's a Kahoot question. And the Tabi'un were the successors of them. Okay, the successors. So the Sahaba were the companions of the Prophet, and the Tabi'un were the successors of the Prophet. I now want to take you over to the actual Riyadh al-Salihin itself. And inshallah, we're just gonna look at it together. So can you see my screen? Can somebody tell me? You can see my screen, right? I hope, okay. So this is what Riyadh al-Salihin looks like. And subhanAllah, like when I pulled this from the shelf, it was really interesting because when I opened this one actually is my father's handwriting. So may Allah have mercy on him. This is off of my father's bookshelf. But then when I was like, no, let me get the ones off of my bookshelf, I noticed these are older than my children because my father actually gave this to us too, back when I just got married. So this is all, you know, may Allah inshallah have mercy on him. But this is Riyadh al-Salihin. It comes in different formats. This is one that was published by Dar es-Salaam. This is also a Riyadh al-Salihin. There's many different collections that we could look at, but because of time, this is a concise one. So here it's divided into 2 books. And if we look back, I'm gonna flip over to that contents paper. If everybody can maybe look at the contents paper again. Let me see if I can pull this up. So let's see what it says so that we can get familiar. So in hadith books, and it's gonna take many times to keep, you know, going over this over and over so you can be familiar, because I'm assuming that nobody has done this before. I'm assuming that I'm talking to like my child who maybe has never really done this thoroughly before. So if we look at the type of things that are here in the contents, it says untitled because there's a lot of chapters in the beginning where there's no book name on that one. There is a book about manners. So we're going to look at that. There's a book about eating manners. There's a book about dress. So these are some things that we find in Riyadh al-Salihin. Salutation. So if you know what that means, salutation means, you know, how you greet somebody, right? So hello, goodbye, salam, all of these things. There's another whole book about visiting a sick person. And, you know, and right here, these numbers means how many chapters are in that book. So we're going to go through and look at that and just see what that looks like. There's another book called Etiquette of a Journey, which is 166 to 179. We have another book called Excellence of the Quran right here. And you can see there's like 50 chapters on that. But I want you to notice that the next book, Itikaf, only has 1 chapter. So there's a great variety in how many chapters are in each of these books. It can look very, very different. So, you know, these are all things I want you to know about hadith so that you feel that confidence when you're going in and accessing these hadith. Also look at Hajj, this book called Hajj. It has only 1 chapter. The book about jihad looks like it has about 6 chapters. Eulogizing and thanking Allah. Eulogizing means when somebody dies, how do you behave? And thanking Allah, this has 1 chapter. Remembering Allah, that looks like it has how many? Who can tell me? What's 249 minus 244? 5, right? So there's about 5 chapters that are in that are about that. Book of supplications, that means dua. Here we have 3 chapters. Prohibited deed. This is a very long book. What does the word prohibited mean? Does anybody know what prohibited means?
Prohibited from like things.
Prohibited means it's not allowed, it's haram. So prohibited deeds means all those things that you're not allowed to do. So this is a very long book. It has lots of chapters, 254 to 372. So it's got over 100 chapters in it. Okay, so that's just, you know, so let's get to know it a little bit more by actually looking in here. So I'm going to switch over to my DocCam again. Let's see, share the screen. Here's my DocCam. Zoom out a little bit here. All right. So when we said the contents of the book, do you see where it says chapters? Okay, let me enter, waiting in here. Okay. Trying to get these people to enter, but I think some people are having trouble, so they're re-entering. All right. So at the top it says, okay. The top it says Riyadh al-Salihin Volume 1. You have the contents right here. You have all these chapters that say different things on them. Okay, Ahmed, can you help me enter people into the room because there's people entering. See the waiting room and enter those people into the room where it says admit. Just admit them in the room. That's it. Yeah, this one. Thank you. So right here, these are chapters, and then here's the topic of the chapter. So if I'm saying chapter 4, it says on truthfulness. It gives you the page number to go to. You see? If you go down here, it says chapter 14, following a middle course in prayer. So this is giving you a topic name of what's in that chapter. However, we said that the entire first 83 chapters did not have, in Riyadh al-Salihin, which is a organized, organized fashion of these hadith, the first 83 chapters did not have a name to it, right? Right now, the first book that had a name to it is called Book of Manners. So here we have chapter 84 to 98, which is just Book of Manners. What kind of things would be in this book? What kind of things are in this book? So for example, chapter 84, it says modesty. How about chapter 85, keeping a secret? Chapter 86, fulfillment of a pledge. 87, perseverance in safeguarding a good practice. So these are different kinds of manners that are in this book, and it has different chapters. Now look at the next chapter. Who can tell, I'm sorry, not the chapter, book. Who can tell me what this book is about? It says book of what?
Eating manners.
Eating manners. So this is a book of eating manners. So pause for a second. I know that when we think of book in America, we think of this thing that has like a cover on two sides, but we are looking at, this is actually a collection of books right here, okay? So, when they're saying book, it's a book of hadith. And then when they have a chapter, these are like different, things inside the book. So here's a chapter that says preferring the use of the right hand for performance of all good acts. So if we wanted to skip to that section, Book of Eating Manners, we go to, this is chapter 9, page 401. Let's see what that would say. So here we have page, here's the book. Let's go to page 401. Okay.
Hey, mommy, someone wrote over here.
Okay, so it's okay. You don't have to worry about that. All right, so let's see what it says. For example, in one of those, let's look at 721. If you can see that one. Oh, is it flipped? Or you can read it? Okay, no, I think you can read it. So let's look at 721, where it says right here, Hazrat Aisha radiallahu an. So here's the isnad right here. This is isnad, which means a chain of narrators. Ahmed, I want you to be a little careful because I don't want the recording to get messed up. Okay, thank you. So right here, Hazrat Aisha radiallahu an relates. So why does every hadith use the word relates? The reason is because an individual is transmitting it. Okay, this is the individual who witnessed what the Prophet did, right? So here it says Hazrat Aisha relates what? And we said that every hadith is going to say that the Prophet did something or said something, right? So here, that the Holy Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, preferred to use his right hand in all actions. For instance, for performing his ablutions, for combing his hair, and for putting on his shoes. So this is all going to be about the actions of the Prophet right here. And then at the end, it's going to say Bukhari and Muslim, or it's going to say any of the, collections of hadith. So right here, it says, it gives you the number of the hadith in that collection. It gives you the isnad, and it gives you the matan. So this is a traditional way that the hadith are organized here. So there you go. Let's look at, go ahead, yeah. Okay, let us look here. Some more of the manners, or not the manners, but more of the book names. So the book of dress, for example. Here we have the book of dress, etiquette of dressing, preference of wearing a shirt or tunic, the length of the shirt, sleeves, and size. So, we talked about this, that, once again, going back to the importance of the sunnah and following, Islam, how do we know how to dress? We go back to what Islam tells us about how to dress. Well, how do we know that? Go to the hadith, go to the Quran. So here, look at what the detail is on this information. This is the detail. Virtues of moderation in dressing and avoidance of such garments without necessity of religious justification. Here it says on prohibition of wearing silk by men and sitting on it, and permission to females to wear silk. So here we know from this hadith that the men are prohibited to wear silk, right? But women are allowed to wear silk. Okay. Also, you know, just some different etiquettes, like, you know, etiquettes of sitting, reclining, sleeping, dreaming. These are all etiquettes in our religion. These are details about how we live our life. And that's what makes us very unified as Muslims, is when we know, you know, the etiquette of things. If we're all following the same model, right? If we're following the same model, then we're going to be, you know, unified in that. We're following the same religion, you see. Let's look at the volume 2 right here. So volume 2, what does volume 2 have to say? Book of visiting a sick person. So here, I hope maybe I can make the camera a little bit better that way. So the book of visiting a sick person, and also a funeral proceeding, offering prayers for the deceased, presence of the burial. So we have to look for our guidance in these hadith, right? How to pray for the sick, right? Etiquettes about the sick from his family members. What one person should say, says what a person should say to spare his life. Permission to the patient to give, you know, here, you know, just urging a dying person to affirm the kalima. Things like this. So I just want you to see the level of detail that's in our religion. You know, joining funeral prayers and processions and presence on burial. So it's really important to know what Islam offers us, right? And the only way is by kind of looking into what is provided in our authentic sources. So Islam really provides us with so much guidance that we are also expected to follow. If you look at like another book, this is Etiquette of a Journey, right? Etiquette of a Journey. What to pray when fearing men. Virtue of praying while on a journey. What to pray on arriving at a place. Look at all of these details. Then you have the excellence of the Holy Quran. Here's a whole nother book. Okay, virtues of ablution, virtues of adhan, congregational prayer, right? Virtues of congregational prayer. So if we turn to page 536, we can see what it has to say about that. For example, let's see what it says. So virtues of congregational prayer, right? So here we read on hadith number 1064, Hazrat Ibn Umar radiallahu anh. So that's the isnad, right? That's the isnad. Relates. Always it's related. Always you're going to see it's related because it's from an individual to an individual. And then it says that the Holy Prophet said, recompense for a prayer afforded along with the congregation is 27 times more than the prayer offered in home or bazaar. And that is by, you know, in the Bukhari and Muslim, right? So, you know, this is just an important, you know, thing for us to know what a hadith even looks like. So I wanted us to be able to do that. And we're going to practice looking at a few from every single, you know, book. Pretty much over the next few days, I want to go over some different ones. I also want you to know some of the authentic narrators. So the ones that we're going to go over in this class, I will tell you very quickly. Abu Dawood, Al-Bukhari, Al-Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, Imam An-Nasai, and Imam Muslim. These are some of the hadith scholars that every day we're going to take a little bit of information. We're going to get a little bit of information about each of them. So today, inshallah, we're going to do one of them, which is Imam Bukhari. He's a hadith scholar. He's an Imam of Hadith and Sunnah. So let me go over this one with you, and I really encourage you all to take some notes. I will, you know, I have that key terms, and I will try to provide you with more supporting documentation. But the thing with Hadith Sciences is there's terminology. There's also, you know, this information about the scholars. You may want to jot some notes down just to help it, you know, sink in, because, you know, we all need that knowledge to be reinforced. So inshallah, let's talk a little bit about Imam Bukhari. So Imam Bukhari is considered the most authentic book in Islam. Okay, Sahih al-Bukhari is considered the most authentic book in Islam, okay, next to the glorious Quran. So that is a Kahoot question. When I ask you which collection is considered the most authentic, you say Sahih al-Bukhari. Okay, and he was born in 194 AH. 194 AH. His full name, Abu Abdullah al-Bukhari, was born on Friday, the 13th of Shawwal, 194 AH. So this gives you like an idea of when these people lived. In the city of Bukhara, in Khorasan. Okay, that's present-day Uzbekistan. In a family renowned for their uprightness and righteousness. In fact, I'm going to let you know if you need to write it down. You don't need to write down everything. Just don't worry about writing unless I tell you. So I do kind of want you to know, like, you know, around when he was born, which is 194 AH. That just lets you know, like, you know, when these people lived. And he lived in a family renowned for their uprightness and righteousness. His father Ismail was a practicing scholar and noble man, but he did not remain long and passed away while his children were too young. His son Muhammad showed significant love for Islamic knowledge. Therefore, his mother sent him to the circles of the Quran and Hadith to learn. We know that Imam Bukhari's mother was a very significant figure in his life. So Imam Bukhari showed a peerless learning capacity and excelled in his classmates. So he was just a very good learner with a very good memory. And he was once asked, when did you start seeking Hadith knowledge? He said, I was bestowed the talent of memorizing Hadith when I was in small school, which they called kutab, small school. He was asked, how old were you at the time? And he answered, 10 years or less. He was exceptionally talented in memorizing the Quran, which helped him memorize thousands of Hadith at a very young age. So Imam Bukhari knew thousands of Hadith at a very young age. And one of the stories that circulated about his talent is that of Salim ibn Mujahid, who said, I was with Muhammad ibn Salam al-Baykandari, who said to me, if you came a little while ago, you would have seen a young boy memorizing 7,000 hadith. Salim said, I went out searching for this boy until I met him. Salim said, I told him, you allege that you memorized 7,000 hadith. The young al-Bukhari replied in the affirmative and said, I will not mention a hadith from the Sahaba or their followers, but I have knowledge about their birth, death, and residence. Actually, al-Bukhari was a non-parallel seeker of knowledge. So they really took this knowledge very seriously whenever they memorized the hadith. This was like a very, very important priority for them to know that it was authentic and to memorize every single detail about that hadith. And then I want to tell you a little bit more about his pursuit of knowledge. He memorized the whole Quran at the age of 10. So you can write that down, that Imam Bukhari memorized the whole Quran at the age of 10. He then moved on to hadith learning, and by the age of 16, he memorized entire hadiths narrated by Ibn al-Mubarak and Waqi. So all of the hadith by Ibn al-Mubarak and Waqi, he memorized by the age of 16. But I do want you to know that he also knew the Quran by the age of 10. He traveled for narrating hadith to Balkh and Nishapur. He then went to Mecca and remained in it for a while, and then traveled to Baghdad and the Levant and Egypt. He got a lot more knowledge and narrated many hadith. It's reported that his sheikhs counted more than that. It is reported that his sheikhs is counted as more than 1,000 scholars. As al-Bukhari started teaching hadith when he was 17 years old, he used to say, I memorized 100,000 authentic hadith and I memorized 200 inauthentic hadith, okay? So he used to say that he memorized 100,000 authentic hadith. Among the sheikhs of al-Bukhari, his teachers were Imam Ahmed al-Hanbal, Hamad ibn Shakir, Makki ibn Ibrahim, Abu Asim an-Nabil, and among those who narrated from al-Bukhari were Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj, at-Tirmidhi, an-Nasa'i, Muhammad ibn Nasr al-Marwazi, and many others. I also want you to know about his works. So the writings of Imam Bukhari include numerous books, and they're known as al-Jami'i, al-Musnad, al-Sahih, al-Mukhtasar, min umuri Rasulullah, wa sunani wa ayyami. It is translated as the abridged collection of authentic hadith with connected chains regarding matters pertaining to the Prophet, his practices in all times, and that is also known as Sahih al-Bukhari. Okay, I also want you to know that he was a very practicing and religious man. So Imam al-Bukhari was a pious and practicing and devout, knowledgeable scholar. He was distinguished with his exact observance of the Sunnah without any slackness or indolence. There's nothing more evidencing of his sincerity than the spread of his Sahih al-Bukhari that is considered as the most authentic book next to the Quran. Imam al-Bukhari was a shining star in the space of piousness and fear of God. He used to say, I hope that I meet Allah and that he does not call me to account for backbiting anyone. Yet his absorption with hadith did not impede him from observing jihad. It is reported that he would frequent places of archery to be prepared for jihad. He was reported to go borderline cities defending the Muslim state. And then we have some other scholars who have praised al-Bukhari. So I'll give you a few of those. It says like Raji' al-Hafid said, he, al-Bukhari, is one of Allah's signs walking on earth. Another one, Al-Hussein al-Samarqandi said, Muhammad ibn Ismail is singled out with 3 characteristics in addition to his praised ones. He was a reserved man, unambitious about what people have, and completely bent on seeking knowledge. Another one says, I saw in a dream that the Prophet was walking and Muhammad ibn Ismail was walking behind him. Wherever the Prophet placed his foot, Muhammad ibn Ismail was placed his foot. They're talking about Imam Bukhari. And another one says that Ibn Khuzaymah said, I have never seen underneath the sky one who is more knowledgeable in memorizing of the hadith of the Messenger of Allah, peace upon him, than Muhammad ibn Ismail. Okay, so these are just some examples of the scholarly praise. I also want to give you some of his quotes or his own words. This is what some of the things that Imam Bukhari said. He said, I know nothing that people may need, but it is found in the Quran and Sunnah. He also said, I hope that I meet Allah and he does not call me to account for backbiting anyone. He also said, I did not start teaching hadith until I became full aware of the authentic and inauthentic narrations, reviewed all the books of opinion, and visited Basra 5 times about it, and left no authentic hadith, but I wrote it except what I deemed it not authentic. Okay? He also said, I never willed to start any speech that included the worldly life, but I will start with praising and commending Allah. In 256 AH, Imam al-Bukhari passed away at the age of 62 in a small town near Samarkand called Khartank. May Allah confer peace upon our greatest Imam. So that's just a little bit about Imam al-Bukhari. Let's review, before the Kahoot, let me just ask you a few questions. So, or actually I'll remind you of a few of the words. So isnad of a hadith is the chain of narrators. The matan is the text of narrators, right? If you remember the couple of other keywords, the Sahaba are the companions, the Tabi'un are the successors, okay? We also had, yes, you want to use my phone for the Kahoot? The Musta'ala of the Hadith are the classification of Hadith, right? The Musta'ala of Hadith, you can jot this down, it's on the Kahoot. So the classification of Hadith is Musta'ala, and Rijal al-Hadith is the study of the reporters of the Hadith, okay? And so inshallah, we are going to, and of course, the greatest collection is the Bukhari, okay? So welcome to everybody. I'm so happy to see you here.
Can they see this because this is my answers?
No, they can't see it. All right, so I'm gonna push start now. All right, everybody, good luck with this. Only 11 questions. So the first question, Muslims believe the Prophet Muhammad communicated the religion to them in how many forms? At the beginning, we said, so the answer is it 2, 4, 6, or 8? The answer is 2, exactly. So how did the Prophet, yes, how did the Prophet communicate his religion to us? Through the Quran and the Sunnah, right? And the Sunnah is given to us through the Hadith. Very, very good. Next question, true or false? Those forms include the Quran and Sunnah. Is that true or false? Those forms include the Quran and Sunnah. Is that true or false? Yes, very good. Everybody got that right, mashallah. Good job. The next question.
Oh no, wait, it's still loading on.
The hadith were transmitted how? Was it from individual to individual, God to individual, individual to God, or none of these? Yes, so the hadith were transmitted from individual to individual. Very, very good, mashallah. Good job, everybody. The next question, what is a isnad? What is the isnad? Ink used to write hadith, chain of transmitters, category of a chapter of hadith, or the book of hadith. What is the isnad? Yes, it is the chain of transmitters. Very, very good, inshallah. All right, number 5. What is the matan of the hadith? The chain, the text, the salutations, or the classification? What is the matan of the hadith? Yes, the answer is the text. So the main part of the hadith is the matan of the hadith. Very, very good, mashallah. Good job. I know some people, I know the internet can slow people down, and I'm sorry. But you are able to play this anytime after class as well and make it available. Hadith can vary in their degree of authenticity. Is that true or false? So I don't know if we directly talked about this today, but depending on how reliable the narrators are, yes, that's very good. So the hadith can vary in degrees of authenticity depending on the isnad. Very, very, very good. All right, okay. Let's go to the next question. True or false? Scholars accept hadith that go directly against the Quran. Is that true or false? Scholars accept hadith that go directly against the Quran. That is false. You will never accept a hadith that goes against the Quran. It has to support the Quran or complement the Quran or explain the Quran. But yes, if it goes against the Quran, that means there's something wrong there. Okay, let's go to the next one. Good job, everybody. Number 8, who are the Sahaba? Who are the Sahaba? Successors, those who read about the Prophet in history books, the companions, or those who lived before the Prophet? Who are the Sahaba? I'm sorry. So the answer is the companions of the Prophet are the Sahaba. That's very important to know. Okay, ready? Okay. So, and the next question, what term means classification of hadith? Rijal al-hadith, ibadah al-hadith, mu'allaq, or musta'ala al-hadith? Which term means classification of hadith? Oh, sorry. The correct answer is musta'ala al-hadith. That is the classification of hadith. Don't worry, we're going to keep repeating some of this information as we get more and more, so that we get more familiar. Okay. Do you want to open the door for the internet connection? Okay. Okay, we're just giving an extra second because.
Okay, just press the next one.
Okay, there we go. Number 10. What is Rijal al-Hadith? Rijal al-Hadith, study of the content of hadith, study of the language of hadith, study of the reporters of hadith, or all of these. What is Rijal al-Hadith? Yes, the answer is it's the study of the reporters of hadith. So if you know the word Rijal, that means man, right? So it's the reporters of hadith. That gives you a little bit of a clue. And the next question is, you guys are doing really great, mashallah. Number 11, whose collection is considered the most authentic collection in Islam? Bukhari, Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, or none of these? Yes, you're absolutely right. And the answer is Bukhari, mashallah. I think most of you got all those questions right. Let's take a look. So we have in third place, 9 out of 11, Slime, welcome. Number 2, 9 out of 11, Asma, excellent. And 10 out of 11 is Maliha, mashallah, mashallah, mashallah. You guys did really, really great on that. That was our very first shot at our Hadith Sciences Kahoot. And that is new information. And anytime you go to a new subject, there's a little bit of time it takes to, for y'all to start learning how to go about it. But you guys did really great today, mashallah. Tomorrow we meet back again and continue. If you are able to access those documents on the webpage, that's going to help you to keep up with the key vocabulary terms and as we go through the different hadith books, inshallah. So thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Let's do a quick dua. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wal asr innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.